Malala Yousafzai is an outstanding model for a global citizen. Malala is a name that sounds in every corner of our earth. She shattered violence and extremism towards girls. She is a role model for millions of girls and women across the world. The following text is taken from malala.org. Malala is born in Mingora, Pakistan, to proud parents Ziauddin and Turpikha Yousafzai. Growing up in Swat Valley, Malala shares Ziauddin's love of learning. She spends her childhood playing outside and exploring new worlds in books. In December of 2008, the Taliban issues an edict banning girls from going to school. Using the pen name Gul Mukai to protect her identity, Malala begins blogging for the BBC about life under the Taliban. She describes how she feels in the final days before her school is set to close. After reading Malala's blog for the BBC, the New York Times features Malala and Ziauddin in a short documentary about their life and fight to protect girls' education in Swat. Ziauddin's school is able to reopen and Malala is excited to return to the classroom. Although she fears retaliation for speaking out against the Taliban, she publicly campaigns for girls to go to school and wins Pakistan's first national youth peace. Due to her increased prominence, both in Pakistan and around the world, the Taliban target Malala. A masked gunman boards Malala's school bus and asks for her by name. He shoots Malala in the head, neck, and shoulder. Malala survives but remains in critical condition as she is transported to the United Kingdom for treatment. After multiple surgeries and months of rehabilitation, Malala is discharged from the hospital and rejoins her family at home in Birmingham, UK. Malala puts on her backpack and school uniform and steps into a classroom for the first time since the attack. Determined to continue their campaign for girls' education, Malala and Ziauddin set up Malala Fund, an organization dedicated to give all girls access to education. Over the next few years, Malala meets with girls around the world in many heads of state, carrying her message of girls' education and equality. In her first public appearance since the attack, Malala speaks at the United Nations on her 16th birthday. The UN declares July 12th Malala Day, and Malala promises to dedicate this day each year to shining a spotlight on the world's most vulnerable girls. Malala wins the Nobel Peace Prize. She invites girls from Syria, Nigeria, and Pakistan to attend the ceremony in Oslo as she becomes the youngest ever Nobel laureate. Malala marks her 18th birthday by opening a secondary school for Syrian refugee girls in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. She spent her 18th birthday meeting with refugee girls living in the Dadaab and Kakuma camps in Kenya and the Mahama camp in Rwanda. In her last first day of secondary school, Malala launches a campaign encouraging people around the world to support education for yes, all girls. Before beginning university, Malala traveled to North America, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America on her Girl Power trip. She was on a mission to meet girls and listen to their stories. Everywhere she went, she heard directly from girls about barriers to their education, like violence, poverty, child marriage, and machismo culture. Malala brought their messages and concerns directly to the world leaders. She held over 8,000 meetings with presidents and prime ministers, urging them to invest in girls' education. Malala is currently enrolled at the University of Oxford, where she is studying philosophy, politics, and economics at Lady Margaret Hall. She balances her school, work, and social life with leading the fight for girls' education around the world.
As you all may know, Malala is a female rights activist. She is someone many look up to. Although many of us don't really pay attention to what she has to do through every day, she used to be a normal girl who loved to tell jokes back in school. Not many things she had to worry about. Now that she is noticed by many, she has to take precautions. She checks her front gate, her family's bedrooms and windows just to make sure that they were safe. Being shot in the head was a huge obstacle she had to overcome, but now she has many more. Making friends is one of them. Girls see the Malala who stood up for female education and not her real self, the girl she was with before all this happened. Also, many people support her, which puts a lot of pressure on Malala to make sure to achieve her goal.
Malala is an activist for gender equality. Specifically, she focuses a lot on female education. The attempt on her life, which was meant to silence her, has only strengthened her resolve and made her more influential internationally. Much of her activism is about being a vocal advocate and inspiring others into action. So, after her recovery, she used her newfound fame to spread awareness of the issue of female education. In 2013, she published a book about her story and was even invited to give a speech in the UN. Furthermore, she set up the Malala Fund, which works to empower and encourage girls to achieve an education through advocacy and financial aid. This fund works with 6 different countries, along with international leaders, to provide solutions for global equality in education for girls. In July 2015, on her 18th birthday, Malala opened a school for Syrian refugees in Lebanon, near the Syrian border. The school, funded by the Malala Fund, offers education and training for girls aged 14 to 18. This is exemplary of her call to world leaders to invest in books, not bullets.
Malala is the perfect figure of what a denationalized citizen looks like. In her local city of the Swat Valley, she recognized a problem and made a claim. That claim against the Taliban would threaten her life, but Malala stood her ground. She moved forward and became an activist for the girls around her being robbed of their education. She utilized platforms of her local television news, radio, and found an outlet through the BBC website where she used the fake name Gul Makai and wrote daily diary entries. After her incident with the Taliban, the world looked at Malala as a survivor with such ambition, dedicated to have her voice heard, and that is what she continues to do. With the world's attention on Malala, she's now become a voice for girls everywhere. Her claim is that every girl, like boys, have a human right to education, and she would not settle for anything less. As we've seen, she's created funds, met with national and international leaders in order to advocate for these girls. Malala's activism, her voice, and story transcend all borders as she climbs the ladder in becoming an international icon and leader for girls all over the world. She has showed our group that an activist can be anyone, and they don't have to come from a place of privilege. You can be an ordinary girl in the Swat Valley with a passion. You can find your own outlets and your own platforms, and you have your voice heard. Malala's home will always be the Swat Valley, and as she travels, she focuses her time and care toward every individual whom she speaks to. She listens to their story, and she doesn't travel across the world with no ties or meaning. She wants to hear what these girls have to say, and she continues to be driven by her growing experiences and knowledge. This is what a denationalized citizen looks like. Malala is a global citizen.